Please stay tuned till the end to see this PSA from Jupi while she reads Humanity for Filth.
How we're supposed to
Thank
live.
you.
All right, so I came across this video about women and PMS and just I guess what it puts our bodies through biologically and neurologically. The podcast is called Almost 30. So it's called Work with Your Cycle. Do you know, when I clicked it, I thought that it was talking about work with your sleep cycle. So that's why I clicked it. But here we are. And like I said, it just sounded interesting. So here we go. I'm going to fast forward to where I was. I was only a few minutes in. So this.
All right, hold it forward. Dude, honestly, that's so crazy. So today's conversation with Dr. Sarah Hill, if you guys remember, we had a really powerful conversation. A lot of the clips went viral. This was like a huge one. Your brain on birth control. And a lot of the conversation was talking about the effects on birth control that I think a lot of us overlooked. I overlooked. I was on birth control from a young age. I got off when I was like 26. And how it impacts, who you choose as a mate, how it impacts how you think, how it impacts your emotions. Yeah. And, my intention is not my intention with that conversation personally wasn't to be like, we're bad for being on birth control or not, but just to really make us aware that there are really, really powerful impacts of birth control on us as women that we should be thoughtful about when we're engaging with that type of drug that we take every single day for years and years and years on end.
100%. One of our most popular episodes for sure. And she's just such a wealth of knowledge. And
so, like I said, I'm on birth control. It's a fairly new thing for me. I was actually against birth control for years. Not against it. I don't want to say that, because I'm so grateful that we have these options as women. But I was not a user of it because something in me just felt like it was unnatural. Like something in me just was like, I don't know, it didn't seem natural to stop my cycle, just didn't. But it wasn't necessarily smart because I got pregnant a lot. I've had several abortions, so I am very pro-choice, and getting on birth control is a pro-choice decision. So your body, your choice. I'm on the arm one because I am so fertile. I get pregnant. I get pregnant. You look at me, I'm already pregnant. So, yeah. But to what they were saying, I had already just felt that naturally, instinctively, that I was like, something ain't right about just stopping your cycle. It has to go somewhere. All that blood has to be released somewhere, some way. It shouldn't, they can't just stop it. But anyways, here we go.
her new book, The Period Brain, The New Science of Why We PMS and How to Fix It. I told her, I was like, I feel like this is so timely, where I've just been hearing from so many, or I've even been seeing this too, people speaking about it online, just the experience of really painful periods, or literally having 2 weeks out of the month where people are out of commission. And I'm like, wait, what? This is that's debilitating. So people are experiencing very debilitating PMS.
It's just so ironic. Me and a girlfriend of mine, she's not even someone that I know in person. We've just been Facebook friends for years. She lives all the way in Germany. She has a village of her own, I'll say. I'm not even going to say how many kids she has, but she has quite a few. And we were talking about literally this topic earlier. We were messaging about it, saying how I was telling her how my period has me out of commission, and how I just have no energy, and how I've always had this theory, not really a theory because it's obvious, it's already scientifically proven, but they never really give you that. When you're a woman on your period, they won't let you back it with science. They're like, it's not measurable. Oh, every woman experiences it differently, blase, blase, blase. But think about it. You're losing so much blood in this time. whether you're packing it with a tampon or not. Another thing that is fairly new to my lifestyle, where I'm regularly using them on my period, but I'll dive into that in a moment. But just think about it. You're regularly losing this blood, and even when you go to donate blood, they tell you, take it easy, don't do too much, stay hydrated. Out. Stay hydrated, eat something, and rest, because they're taking blood from you, and that is literally your life source. So imagine for women, some women go through the full week, but you're going anywhere from 3 to 7 days of losing blood consistently. Okay. And for some women like me, it is heavy, and it wasn't always. This is a recent thing, where it's become, a heavy period the way it is. And that's another reason why I had to start using tampons, because I was like, I couldn't even, I couldn't do anything if I didn't, because I couldn't keep, like, my normal method for years was like either a pad, like a really thin one, or I would just like do the toilet paper and just put it right there in my line as a liner. But packing a tampon up there, that was another thing. I was just like, oh my God, like, it's just so toxic. And it is. But I'm also grateful that there are things like this that allow us some type of versatility while we still do it. But I don't think that I think that there should be a standard of, when women are on their menstruation, that we don't have to go to work and it's paid, or that these things are known, like, they're not within our control. So why there is not something already lined up? Just because every woman has it doesn't mean we're like, oh fuck it, they all have it, so we just need to go on as usual. No, it can be seriously debilitating, just like these women were saying, because now my period, I'm telling you, it leaves me in a ball, and I have no energy because of the amount of blood that I'm losing. And in some countries, I do believe that they pay for women when they're on their menstruation. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying, I do think that might be a thing.
Symptoms. And so she goes into just the fact that, this is really kind of like a mismatch in terms of your biology and the environment that you are in. And not just literally the environment, what's around you, but your lifestyle, what you're eating, your stress levels. And she particularly looks at the luteal phase, and just what we are doing, consuming, how we be during that phase, and how it affects how we be. She said, yeah, how we be.
Well, that's hilarious.
During that phase.
Okay, yeah. That
was hilarious.
Instead of it's how we be, instead of how we be, it's how we be. We are a human being. How we be.
That's hilarious. That was super cute.
So we talk a lot about how you can support yourself during the luteal phase. We talk about how PMS in her studies is really a neuroendocrinological mystery. And she's discovered some
neuro, meaning your mind,
that has made it click for thousands of women. So it's going to be fascinating whether you experience painful periods or not, because we also talk about, and this is a topic I didn't expect to talk about with her, but I asked her about how this is related to what we're seeing, or how it could be related to what we're seeing in terms of infertility.
Oh my God. Oh shit. I'm so glad that it put an ad on there. Okay. That was another reason that it just came back to me, why I was like iffy about birth control growing up. Okay. So as a teenager, the Kardashians were super big. I mean, they're huge now, but they were like, Keeping Up with the Kardashians was new. It used to come on E. Oh my God, I was like such a fan. I loved them. I still think that they're absolutely iconic. I think that there are a lot of things, whatever. It doesn't even matter. I'm not going to get to that. The point is that, okay, so the Kardashians were on, and it was like big. Me and my mom used to watch it sometimes together. So yeah, like, I loved this show. And okay, I remember when Courtney got pregnant, right? She was like in Miami and like they were on the road trip. She kept getting sick and she took the test with Chloe and she found out she was pregnant. And I was thinking, oh my God, they're going to come to an end, blah, blah, blah. Who knew that that they would be where they're at now? It's crazy. But anyways, and she got pregnant by Scott. Now, fast forward years later, Kim wants to get pregnant with Kanye. She's had all these marriages and Kim was on birth control. Like I remember that they would talk about it, about her and Chloe being on birth control throughout the seasons, like throughout the years. They would talk about this and mention this, and Courtney was never on birth control. At least so she says. That's what she, that was the claim, was that she was never on birth control. And I remember like also at the time, Courtney was like, doing her holistic thing, whatever. And that was like her big change of lifestyle now that she knew she was pregnant. And, that always caught my attention, being this young girl. I was like, oh, wow. And I already had a type of interest in the holistic lifestyle. I was already in the fitness, in the fitness game, and I was in ROTC. So that always sparked my interest. And I remember at some point she like mentioned to them that them being on birth control wasn't any good for them, like at some point. And I remember thinking like that made sense. She never went, I don't remember all the details because maybe she did go into it, but I remember in my mind I was thinking, yeah, like it makes sense. Like you don't want to stop your period because then it may never come back. And then fast forward, Kim is struggling to have babies with Kanye. She was like struggling to get pregnant. I don't remember if it was natural or if she ended up having to do IVF to get pregnant with North. I don't recall at this moment. Maybe I'll look it up and put it in the video for clarity, whatever. But anyways, and I remember her pregnancy was like so bad where Courtney had already popped out like 2 or 3. She had like Penelope and Dash and whatever. She had like a couple of them at this point. And I remember they had a clip of her like pulling the baby out. Her pregnancies were like smooth. So Kim had that to go off of. And also Chris telling her, her experience. So when Kim got pregnant, I don't think that she expected it to be this difficult, nor did I, but having just been such a fan and watching it, at length the way I did from the beginning. But when it was, I remember thinking, man, it must be from the birth control, and I think she ended up having to go through IVF with one or like a surrogate eventually with the other kids. Like she only had 2 pregnancies and then, or maybe it was just the one. I don't remember, but I just remember it was either she had 2, and I'm going to probably get clarity on all this, but the pregnancy like wore her ass out. She ended up becoming like pre-diabetic and it was just awful. And I just remember thinking, wow, like I really think it's from the birth control. And then the same thing ended up happening with Chloe where she struggled to get pregnant. And yeah, I remember that those were kind of my first insight. Now I didn't grow up too much with any women examples other than my mom, and my mom was like pro birth control. And then she was pro birth control, but didn't want to talk about sex. So, there was really no message behind it other than it was to control getting pregnant. And I had already had a teenage pregnancy with my son's dad at like 16 or something like that. So yeah, she tried to put me on birth control and I didn't end up like taking it. I think I took it one time and then I didn't take it again. It was the pill at the time. But yeah. So I think I like obsessed over them because they also were my, like, kind of like my, not gurus, that's like a strong word, but they were the women at the time that I like. There wasn't Instagram and stuff, so they were the only women that I saw around being women, being feminine women. I didn't have any other examples. So the Kardashians, I actually leaned on them. And I understand why why they have such a huge impact on the culture, whether you like them or not. So anyways, yes, that was one of my first kind of like validations. And I was like, something's up with that birth control.
Another experience that we have as women just into the spotlight, because I feel like, and I was saying this before, we have so many of my friends are suffering in silence, thinking that having incredibly painful periods or having these intense PMS symptoms for half the month is normal.
Right.
So we're gonna get into it. I really made this like click.
Well, so to get into that, I just want to, first address what we know about hormones, right? And we know that hormones coordinate events in the body, and it sort of shifts their psychology and shifts their body to solving different types of problems. And there's been a lot of discussion, and I'm sure that you've seen this on your social media feed, and I'm sure that this has been the topic of some of the conversations you've had with your girlfriends and with Krista, is about estrogen, right? And like when you're in this estrogenic phase of the cycle, like right near ovulation, that your body is sort of gearing up for the possibility of conception as you feel really sexy and you feel alive and you have energy and all of these things. And essentially your body is conspiring to get you to have sex, right? Because this is the time in the cycle when sex can lead to conception. And we've inherited this brain, right, that's been wired to want to get us pregnant, right? Because genes that did that, or genes associated with that, they would have got passed down a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so there's all of this discussion about estrogen does these things, and they all make a lot of sense. And then nobody really talks about the second half of the cycle, right? So like what goes on after, because if we think about a typical cycle, and we'll just say a 28-day menstrual cycle, just for the sake of simplicity. The first half of the menstrual cycle is characterized by the dominance of the hormone estrogen, right? Again, all about sex and conception, feeling sexy and energetic. And then the second half of the cycle is dominated by the sex hormone progesterone. And progesterone is not really discussed, right? There's all kinds of discussion around estrogen, but we really don't know a whole lot about what progesterone does in terms of, or there's not a lot of discussion about what progesterone does in terms of psychological changes, or, all of this, all we know about.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw this in there before she goes into detail. I did not know about any of that. And as a woman, okay, like that's crazy. It wasn't until I started doing my research on YouTube, like we're going through school and all that, and they don't tell you in detail when we are literally half the population of school. And the reason I started even deep diving was not because I was having painful periods. It's because the week before my period, during that PMS time, it would be what's the word? Like I could identify it by these dry patches. I would get I would get extremely thirsty. Like I could not get enough water in my system. It's almost as if my body was drying out that first, like the week leading up to my period during the PMS. It's like the week leading up to the PMS and the PMS. So it's almost like a 2-week thing, which she was saying how women are practically spending 2 weeks of their, excuse me, let me do this. Practically spending 2 weeks of their month, every month, just being in some type of period or PMS related, like states, whether it's like your mind or your body. So for me, I would get so dehydrated, like crazy. And then I would drink so much water throughout these days that my body was so bloated. So then I'd have these swollen fingers and whatnot. And I still never could quench my thirst. I could still never be satisfied with my hydration. And my face would get these dry patches all right here, here, and here. Like it's same spot all the time. Right here, right here, and right here. I would get just these dry patches. And the only thing that would help at that time because exfoliation was not working. They would come right back. Like if I exfoliated, it would just dry it out more, make it raw, and then it would come back literally the next day. So what I would do was put my wax burner on low and make the wax like warm enough to where it could stick and peel from my skin. I got it. But warm enough that it would stick and peel my skin, but cool enough that it wasn't like how it would be if I was taking the hair off, right? And I would put the wax on these spots and I would rip these patches of dry skin off. And when I tell you, I would like examine my wax, and sometimes I'd be like, oh my God, I wish I could see what it's like under a microscope, because the way that these thick layers of dry patches would just develop on my face, like it was crazy. And this was the only time. And then that coupled with this feeling of hydration, it was like, oh my God, it's like my body is like just not, it just wasn't like absorbing any moisture, and not topically and not orally. So then after I would do that, I would then like rub my face down with aloe, and I would keep my face thick with Vaseline and stuff. And that would help alleviate it some. But I'm telling you, for the next 4 days, though, my face was going to have these dry patches, and they would come back, and I would do the wax, and I would do the same thing. So I would do that about 2 times during this period. And then my face would go back to normal, like as my period kicked on. Another thing was I could not regulate my body temperature to save my life. It still happens to me. The dry patches less, and I think that has to do with my skincare regimen. But also, I can't regulate my body temperature. When I'm starting my period or when I'm on my period, my musk smell changes. Like it's really like potent, but not oniony, but like sweaty though. Like, like I have to change my bed sheets. I have to wash them twice because I'll sweat so much, but I'll be freezing. So I'll be freezing all night. I don't even have my AC running during this time, because I feel so cold, but my body is sweating. It will drench the bed, and the smell of my sweat, like I said, is like it never smells like this at any other time in the month. I mean, and I go to the gym, so I know what my sweat smells like, but this particular time of the month, it smells just different. And it's not necessarily bad, but it's not my normal smell. So I could tell that it was something else being released, and it's the progesterone.
It's like PMS, right? And the fact that many women have this experience of feeling terrible. And I went to the research literature, to try to figure out, like, how common is it to feel terrible in the week or two leading up to your period? And the research finds that it's somewhere around 85% of women have some experience of not really feeling very well during this time. So either
I get so nauseous,
physical symptoms, where they just don't feel great. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking at this and saying, why? Right? So given, that estrogen gets released in the first half of the cycle, and it does all of these things that make a whole lot of sense biologically, because it's gearing your body up for conception and sex. What is progesterone doing in the second half of the cycle, and why does it make us all feel terrible? And there hasn't really been a lot of discussion about what the function of the hormone is. And so I spent the last 2 years really diving into the science of progesterone, and like, what does it do, and how does it change what our bodies need and what our psychological and emotional needs are, in ways that can lead some women to experience what we tend to consider as PMS.
Okay, so what did you find about progesterone? Because I feel like I've heard, I think maybe more so in like this kind of fertile time that I'm in terms of like wanting to conceive and all the things, like maybe hearing that word more so, and understanding a little bit better. But I guess, what did you find, and why is it important? Why is it, what role is it playing? And right, it's not just making us feel terrible.
Yeah, well, so and this is the thing. It's like we have 2 sex hormones, like 2 primary sex hormones, right, estrogen and progesterone. on purpose. And it's because our body is moving us between the two activities that are necessary in order to reproduce. Right? Men only have one primary sex hormone, testosterone, because the only thing that men's bodies and brains need to do in order to reproduce is have sex. Right? One job.
I didn't sue the other driver. I didn't go to court. I just qualified and got $100,000 for my car accident.
One job, one hormone. For women to reproduce, we have to do two things. Right? Our bodies and our brains have to get pregnant, they have to have sex. Right? So we have to have sex. But then we also have to have a fertilized egg implant and get pregnant. Right? And so there's two jobs that women's bodies have to do in order to get pregnant. They have to have sex, and then they have to maintain a pregnancy. Right? And so when we have two different jobs that our bodies have to do, that means we have to have two primary sex hormones. And I say primary sex hormones because both of them are equally as important to one another, which you would never know when you look at the conversations around sex hormones, right? It's all about estrogen. Right. And in fact, if you look at the number of scientific publications that have been conducted by scientists over the last, I don't know, I think I limited it to the last 30 years, but even if you scan it out, I think the bias gets even worse. But the number of papers that have been published looking at the effects of estrogen on our psychology and our bodies is almost twice as frequent as what kind of a black box where nobody's really talking about what is it that our bodies are actually trying to do during this time, right? Because it seems very clear what our bodies are trying to do when estrogen is the dominant hormone, right? Again, sex and feeling energetic, and you see all that, estrogen glow. But what's going on during the second half of the cycle? Because one time, one of the things that, I think that was such an important message for my first book, This Is Your Brain on Birth Control, is just that our hormones change the version of ourselves that our brain creates. Right? And so this is true when we take the birth control pill, right? It makes us, our brain, create a different version of ourselves than who we would be when we were off of it. But the same is true for a naturally cycling woman as she's shifting between being estrogen dominant and progesterone dominant. And I don't mean this in the way estrogen dominant, get the plastic.
Then we have it in different ways. So technically, we're all just, nobody's more advanced because the other animal creatures could do things other better than creatures, and we couldn't be more advanced. And IQ, they're super. We have better IQ. We have better IQ. Their IQ isn't as high as ours. IQ might not even exist in there. And just because we can do different things than they can, and technically more things, really, we all have different languages. Just in the animal kingdom, how they communicate differently. We're just one of those that we communicate differently. Because we have more languages in our one language does not mean different. It just means that we.
You mean it doesn't mean we're better, but we're still different.
And people compare us to animals as in somebody and how they use it as pets. But the reason I always said they're my siblings is because I never thought of it as we're more advanced than them, and they're so much different than us. And no, they're the same as us. We're just evolved different than all of them. But that doesn't mean.
What do you need, Sonny?
My phone.
I already put it back out there or somewhere. I put it out there already.
And we're all different animals. We're just the most different out of all the animals in the world.
With the most type of different capabilities.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't make us better than them.
Yeah, and they're only one colors, and we see the right colors, and everybody else sees different colors that aren't right. But the thing is that we don't know what these colors actually are. That's the thing. This might be blue, and this might be, because some people believe in God. Whoever you guys people believe in, this may or may not be how he made it.
Right, and some animals see in thermal, which we don't see thermal.
So does that make them better than us?
Right, it's just different. They have different capabilities.
We're all going to do something just a little bit different than somebody else, but they're a little bit better. That just makes them a little bit more different in ability.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with that.
They're like, oh, since these animals don't have thumbs and we do, that means they can't grab as well as us. What? And they're not as good as us. But since we can't climb like a squirrel, does that make a squirrel better than us? No, they're just a little. They're just different.
More advanced in the climbing department, where we might be more advanced in the language department.
But we're all animals.
So those were your shower thoughts?
Yeah, and people don't classify us as animals anymore. When we're talking in school, we're in the animal kingdom, which makes us an animal.
Agreed. I'll take that.
Everybody's in the animal kingdom. We're all animals. We're just separated in different parts. We're literally a mammal. So that means now everybody that eats their kind, so a mammal eats mammal, technically cannibal. But what people call cannibal is if they eat their own blood of an animal. Like bear, if they eat bear, then they're considered cannibal. If human eats human, they're considered cannibal. Now here's the crazy part. Since humans live in homes, okay? That and they have technically a more civilized life, that makes them wrong to eat other humans, okay? Okay? But when a bear eats a bear, it's just called nature, okay? The thing is that we're not really supposed to live in homes.
How are we supposed to live?
We're supposed to live outside with all the other, but society, after what people call, I don't know, they started getting more modern with these new discoveries, and then really every human in the world, there's different types of spoiled, but we are spoiled. Humans are spoiled. It doesn't matter if you're the greatest kid in the world.
We're very entitled.
You're the most humble. You're spoiled. We are just made to be spoiled because really, like, we're not supposed to live in here, but we do. And we give all these animals not enough credit to where they really are because they're the ones who really do all the work. We don't
For
have
the
any-
ecosystem, right?
We don't have anything without them. We just sit here and make stuff that they don't need. They could do all this stuff on their own. And since we're talking about everything's better than everybody else, so let's talk about better. Since technically everything's better. They're better than us if that's what you guys want. No, they're better than us because they have better stomachs. But now we're talking about better. Since everybody's like better, better, better. Look, let me break it down. Their stomachs are better than us. It doesn't matter if the food's raw or cooked. Even if they get sick,
They can digest it, huh?
they could digest it. And they could climb, they could get away from people, and the thing is that they all work together. We're always fighting, and they just don't. They say that they don't think and they're not smart. They do a lot of work that we don't give them credit for.
I agree.
Like they grow things. They're like, no, farmers only grow things. They don't do anything. Let's talk about. Look, now we would only have one flower in this whole entire world if they could even grow. Because what bees do, let's talk about the insects. The bees, what they do is that they take one flower and they transfer extra pollen to another flower so the other flower could keep on producing and making more of that other flower. And when something sprouts, they'll take things from another grown one and they'll give it to that one so it could grow, so they could keep the air that we give. And they say that we're the source of oxygen. No.
And what else do we need to even have our oxygen?
We need what's it?
Not an animal, but still very, very
Oh yeah,
important.
tree.
Yep.
We need a tree. And what helps produce those trees? Animals.
And insects and stuff. That people don't even want to be around.
and they just throw things to the side, and they kill so many things like ants. Why y'all be killing ants? They do so much, so much, so much. And they don't even harm unless you're going into their territory, barely. And they give red ants way too much harm to us. Like, they're not bad. If
Like you're trying to say that
they're
they try to, make
they
it
try
seem
to
like
put
they're
too
worse
much
than they are.
things. Yeah,
Like
they'll say every time you walk past one, you're not even close to one, it just starts running to you. Know, you have to actually step in their base. There might be a lot of them, and you might walk past them. They're not gonna attack.
Right, but you're the one that wasn't looking. You stepped all over their home.
And you guys, people just step all over them, and they're like, "Oopsie dazzle." There's nothing we could do about it, but there was. They're all important. If all ants died, guess what? Guess what?
What?
We wouldn't have any source, like, not a lot of source of power, because what they do is that they take energy. There's probably ants living under us, and people use them and kill them to make a lot of things and try to put them up for prices, like it, and they try to make them into candies and try to sell them, but they really are making things that, like, they could help produce all of these things that, like, they could produce mint. They could do all these things that we don't give them credit for, and we give all the credit to ourselves. We're greedy.
Yeah, I agree.
People just say that we're the best and we have the most technology and we could survive the best, but these animals are over here. No. Surviving on no mobile devices, okay? Doing perfectly fine.
Amen.
No home over their head. No light that we could just turn on and turn off.
Amen.
They don't need, and look, there's not greedy. We really don't need none of this money. If we just got the items, look, gave them for free. Look, we don't need any stores because we don't need money. That's the thing. If everybody just stopped producing money, stopped all this, and just worked
How would we survive?
for free, because we could just make the stuff, okay? And the thing is that how are we gonna buy things when they're, and we just need to give it a sec, because we could take all this, and if we stop destroying things for fun, like deers, cats, dogs, and just stop, the world will be better. Stop littering, and you'll see how fast this world could come around. And we just need to stop thinking about all this extra stuff that we don't need, like gloves. We don't need those. We don't need those. We already have water. We already have lakes. We already have all this stuff, and
I should pay for my gloves.
and we could use our hands. We have water for a reason. We have soap for a reason. Oh, soap. We don't even need soap. We have the water for a reason. I know the soap's for extra things and our body can't handle it. There's literally plants that everybody uses. Like, if you guys would just stop using all this stuff for unnecessary things like vegetable oil, we could use that for so much body cleansing, but you guys want to make it an unhealthy oil. We already have olive oil. That's all we need. Unless you really need special supply because somebody's allergic to olive oil, sure, we have butter. That's really, like, we don't need anything else. We have all these stuff that people just, like, take to the side and, like, just throw away. Let's say if we didn't have bears. If we didn't have bears, we wouldn't have all this stuff where, like, they make a lot of stuff, like, you know that stuff you find where they get all that bone? You need that bone because they put it into milk. They put it into all this stuff. And you know where they find that stuff? Around bears in the forest. All that bone they leave over. Come here.
Well, thank you, Judy,
Yeah.
for your
And they kill all these to make
your nature and
little eyelashes, right?
ecological advice.
They kill